Disclaimer: the We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the independent fundamental Baptist church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather as a platform for survivors to share their truth.
Now let's get into today's episode. Here is your host, Olivia.
Hello, Alissa. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, it's good to see you again. If you have not watched or listened to Alissa's episode in season 2, she was one of our very first guests to come on and share about, her life in the IFB. And it was such a great discussion. And, we have formed a great friendship after, recording. And it's been great just to hear, the similarities, even though, like, for me, I didn't come from an extreme IFB background like you did. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of things where when we got done recording, I was like, she has a really good point, about a lot of things that look so innocent, but deep down are really ways that abuse and control can take place. And so if you have not listened, I highly recommend go listening to Alissa's story. She talks about her time at Hyles Anderson at First Baptist Church of Hammond, and then also moving and getting sent to Gaylord, Michigan, where John Jenkins, which is a whole other can of worms, Grace Baptist, all of it. It's just a whole other can of worms that eventually, who knows, I'll probably touch base on within time. But I thought it was important for you to come back on and just kind of talk about, because we kind of talked about it, but we didn't get into like full detail about, your time being present there when Jack Schaap got in trouble, and like the whole scandal, and like how did the church go about it? And yes, there's so many stories and people's perceptions out there of what really happened. I've heard some crazy things where unfortunately there's no proof of it out there, right? So it's like really hard to say who's right and who's wrong in a way. But I mean, I've heard some crazy things, like some top of the notch, where not to say that this person or this other person's perception is not right. It's just, there's some crazy things out there. So I guess where we could start is, maybe give a little background about how close you were with Jack Schaap.
So I was there when Hyles was there. So when Hyles passed away, like I already knew Scott's daughter, Jacqueline. She was my piano teacher. I knew Ken, his son, a little bit. And then, we were there when Scott started doing, like this, however they bring in new preachers to like audition to be the new pastor. And I remember actually getting my little card, even though I was only 11, 10, somewhere in there, and getting to vote for the new pastor because I was a member. So yeah, I think even my little sister, who's like 3 years younger than me, voted Stomp to be pastor.
Do you remember who all were the candidates for it?
I don't. Even then, even though they brought in new candidates, everyone knew Scott was going to be the next pastor.
Yeah.
Like Hyles had just been grooming him that entire time. He married Hyles' daughter. I believe he was already chancellor of Hyles Anderson when, like, around that time. And everyone knew. It felt, even as a little kid, it felt like we were just kind of humoring everyone else that they brought in. I remember enjoying a lot of them, thinking that they were really, like, their sermons were interesting. I was taking notes and, all the things that you're supposed to do. But other than the 4%ers, that the 4% that didn't vote for Scott, everyone just knew that he was going to be the pastor. So I mean, yeah, it just, there was no question about it.
The proof was in the pudding, for sure.
Yeah. And then after he became pastor, so my parents were already at Hyles Anderson. And then my sister and I were attending Hammond Baptist. And my parents could not afford to pay for their college tuitions and me and my sister, especially since my dad was the only one working out of the house. And Scott actually, my parents went to him and told him, like, hey, we don't know what we're going to do. We think we're going to have to pull the girls out, but we don't want to do that. And Scott actually took over the payments of me and my sister's tuition and paid for us through like fourth grade when he took over, all the way through until we moved to Gaylord, which would have been my eighth grade year. And he paid for all of our tuition stuff. When we moved, he was the one who sent us to Grace. He went through and packed me and my sister little goodie baskets for the road. For each of us, we had like little coloring books and like the little like word search, like the little things you used to be able to get when you went on car trips, where it was just like 20, 30 pages of like different games to play in the car. We had Twizzlers and candy and little chocolates and sodas and juice packs and just a whole thing to like keep us occupied and let us have fun on the road trip. 'Cause it was like a 9-hour drive to Gaylord. And he packed all that kind of stuff up for us. I don't know if I ever had one-on-one time with Scott, like in his office. I had been in his office without like any other adults, but it was for the Blue Denim and Lace, like the girls group that they had that Hyle started. Um, I'm sure you've heard fun stories. Um,
Great.
if you got so many pins in a year, you got to go to like a one-on-one thing, or it was like everyone who won it, with Hiles. And I think Hiles did it at his house. And the
Mhm.
year that I won it was the year that he passed away. And so I wasn't able to go to Hiles' house. And I was so bummed. But Scott ended up doing it instead. He carried on the tradition. And so I got to go to, but he just did it at his office at the church. So he got pizza and all that kind of stuff. And it was me and like 10 other girls, maybe. And then Scott and his wife. And there's actually a Bible out there somewhere that Ken Scott owns that has my signature in it because me and like 4 other girls thought that it was Jack Schaap's Bible and it was just his study Bible. And for some reason, we thought it would be fun to sign it because we had his signature in all of ours. And halfway through us signing his Bible, Ken walked in and said, hey, Dad, I left my Bible in here. And it was his Bible. It was not Jack Schaap's. So somewhere out there, there's Ken's Bible that has my signature in it. But like, I remember it all being fun. I never felt uncomfortable around him or anything, but again, I never had any one-on-one time with him. Um, but I think because we were taught to look at them as gods and as rock stars, we just didn't. Like I threw this away when I left my ex, and looking back, I wish that I hadn't, because now it would be an amazing thing to have. But I actually, as a fourth grader, fifth grader, I went down to the altar in front of all of First Baptist and pledged my purity to my future husband during like the invitation call or whatever. And it was just a normal thing that like,
First grade, like
yes,
what?
it was a normal thing. Like my dad got me a purity ring when I was in like third or fourth grade, and I wore it all the way through like high school. It was a very normal thing.
Wow,
Yep. But
that
I
young?
got, yeah, it was so weird. Looking back now, I'm like, that's so uncomfortable. Like, how are all the adults in the room not weirded out by that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you're talking to, I mean, like third and fourth graders, eight, not, I don't even know really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's insane. Like, I would get it if you're like 16, like, whatever. Then, like, sure,
Right.
I've seen that, 16-year-olds are like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, because they know, like, what definitely in the IFB, they're like, oh, in 2 years, 3 years, once I hit college, I'm gonna get my MRS degree and I'll be fine.
Right,
So
exactly.
I can
Yep.
last a couple of years, purity, whatever. But third and fourth graders, like, that is insane.
Mm-hmm. That was like the normal age, just 'cause like Blue Denim and Lace started in fourth grade. And even for there, like it was all about learning how to be a wife because you weren't far away from doing that. It was
Yeah.
learning how to do all these different arts and crafts and make calendars and needlepoint and macrame and just all this kind of stuff. So that way you could do anything that needed to be done to make your house look like a loving Christian wife's home and, make it what your husband wants to come home to and all this kind of stuff. And like, I don't remember if we talked much about Blue Denim and Lace on my first episode.
Um, I don't
Like
think we
we
did.
mentioned it in
I think we did
passing,
it
but
because like you were talking about on, your episode, kind of like their way of like Girl Scouts and earning, and you had all your awards and pins that you show
mhm,
episode. But we can totally talk about it because I think it's very important. I know that speaking with certain survivors from the Hiles group that, just were
mhm.
messaging back and forth, they were like, it was so instilled with us as a girl, a woman growing up in the IFB. Like, you read these books, you take this course at Hyles Anderson, which is still a course to this day to be
Yep.
a good godly Christian wife, right? And
Yeah.
you do these things, you read all these books, and Hyles has tons of books that, I talked about in the first episode and stuff like that that
Mhm.
he's published and he's so proud of, and that they still probably sell, because
There's some of them you can still get reprints of.
yeah, there is.
Yep.
And they're on eBay, they're on Amazon. Like, it is insane. Heck, I
Yeah.
think it's just like I think if you just like search up like the any type of book that that he's made, like the church manual one, the bright pink one, like
Mhm.
it comes up where you can buy it. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? And I know that there's also supposedly like another version of the blue lace denim where he had poems in it, and it was very, very creepy. I still have yet to find that version. I would love,
Yeah.
but he was also known for making poems, and and like looking back, speaking with another survivor, she's like, I remember this one, and it was just like looking now as an adult, like, why was I reading this as a kid? Like, the red flags
Yeah.
there. So,
Yep.
yeah. So, I guess, with your experience, kind of explain the blue lace denim and what it's about.
So yeah, the blue denim and lace was started by Hiles, and there were some skills that you learned in it that like I still use to this day. Like I learned to sew starting in blue denim and lace, but it wasn't done as like our version of the Girl Scouts that way you can learn basic life skills because like everyone should know how to sew on a button. Everyone should like it's whatever, like they're useful skills to have. Just like it's great for kids to know how to tie a knot when they're doing this or how to bait a hook when they're fishing. Like it's just stuff that you don't have to know, but it's really good information to know. It can help you out sometime. But it was all done from the lens. Like every single pin that I have from Blue Denim and Lace was done from like the purpose of you have to know this to be a good wife. And if you don't know it, you can't be a good wife. Your husband will fail, your kids will fail, everything will fall apart. Like that's what it was all pushed as.
Yeah.
And it was the like Scott and like Mr. and Mrs. Scott and Hiles when he was still alive were very involved in it. So they would do like award ceremonies at the church, like on Wednesday night at the end of the service. If memory serves, it was at the end of the service. Like they would cut it a little bit short, and then we'd all sit. Like all the Lieutenant and Lace girls would come in their uniforms, and we'd have all of our pins on our dresses, and we'd go sit up like in the choir section behind the pastor, and then he would stand up and like honor like everyone who earned more than 10 pins that year, more than 25 pins, and you would stand up when he called your name and then like everyone who earned 40 or more pins and like congratulations, you won the pastor study award. And I think I still have like my paper from winning it somewhere. Cindy Scott was super involved. So like on top of it being something that all the girls did and it having that push because you had to do this thing as a fourth grader to be a good wife someday, you also got public praise from your pastor for participating in it and succeeding in it and like all this kind of stuff. Um, Cindy was a little more, I don't remember Miss Hiles being too involved in it. I'm sure she was, but like I was a little too young at that point. But I know Cindy was really involved in it. She would actually come like to the Blue Denim and Lace meetings and hang out and like walk around and talk to us. She was always really sweet. I liked Cindy. I'm sure she's done or said some things while being an IFB pastor that maybe weren't the best, but considering who her dad and her husband were, I thought she was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was definitely a drive to make sure that again, like your pastor noticed how good you were doing. And this thing, like, I don't even think I ever mentioned to my dad or like showed my dad what kind of like projects I was completing and what stuff I was learning to do. Like, he may have noticed from time to time when he came home and saw them, but it was all about like your pastor. It's all about him, which is so weird. Like, especially that's one of those things, like looking back, like it's just
Mm-hmm.
a weird thing to have. But we got off topic earlier. I was going to tell you the thing I wish that I had when I pledged my purity in front of the entire church.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Schaap wrote me a handwritten letter telling me how proud he was that I pledged to stay pure for my future husband, and he can't wait to see how I grow and mature and become a beautiful young lady. And I wish I still had that. As creepy as it is, like now, like when I left everything, nobody was really talking. Even like Eric, like Krasinski, like with Preacher Boys, had like just started his podcast. It was a very new thing. So I didn't think I'd ever have any use for it. I still had every Christian womanhood like magazine issue going back to like the 80s. I had all of them. I had all of Jacqueline Weber, like her Scott's daughter, all of her books. I had a bunch of like Jack Hyles's books. I had all of this stuff. And I just gave it all to my parents because I felt bad throwing it away, you know? But now I wish I had kept all of it. Would have been so fun to have for like times like this.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. And like, if you, as a, person who knows everything with Jack Schaap, right? Writing a handwritten letter saying that to a fourth grader, if your red
Yeah.
flag radar does not go off with that, then I need you to go get checked mentally, because that alone is huge and red flag and creepy. Like,
Hmm.
there's no excuse for it. That's just weird. It's weird. I think it's
And it
weird.
was just accepted.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's accepted in the IFB, right? Because
yeah.
it's literally the IFB is literally a playground for predators,
Hmm.
hands down, because of the way that the system, and I've said this so many times
Yeah.
in episodes, the way that the system is set up, the umbrella, right? They all love talking about
Yep.
the third and the umbrella. Well, they are no better, because the system that the IFB have created is literally a playground for pedophiles. And there's so many different scandals, not just Jack Schaap, that we can use for examples within anything, documentaries, podcasts like mine, any
Hmm.
platforms, any social media out there. There are so many examples, and it's like, it's 2025. When is this going to stop? And unfortunately, it's
Right.
going to stop. And I'm
Mhm.
hopeful for, future generations, with because of social media, because we are more vocal about what is acceptable and what's not, and what is creepy, right? Uh,
Right.
that there will be, maybe it'll be harder to do these things. Maybe it'll be harder to get away with these things, but within the IFB, I have no hope. As someone who has done this now, for 2 years, I have no hope for it to stop, unfortunately. I hate
Yeah.
saying that because I would love that, but
Right.
the amount of people that listen to this weekly, and they still sit and attend these churches. They give their money to these missionaries and missions and faith promise missions,
Yeah.
to these places and facilities where they abuse teenagers for profiting because it's $1 billion industry, or they have just their predator behavior. They make
Right.
they make women feel like they're only good to be a good Christian wife, and
Yeah.
Alyssa and I, like, we both have said on your episode, you are no longer, you don't identify with any religion, you're more agnostic.
Mhm.
And, you've always been like searching for that. And, for me, I do say I'm a Christ follower. And it's unfortunate because these things are like, I don't blame anyone who has left the faith, because I understand. Like, I really do.
Yeah.
Definitely when you have so extremists like you, like the way you were raised at First Baptist Church,
Mhm.
and you see that, it's understandable. Like, I totally get that. And it sucks.
Yeah.
It it hurts, generations. And what's one thing that you and I both have heard probably our whole life within the church is always, we're not going to say anything because this will hurt the cause of Christ.
It'll
This
hurt the
will hurt,
ministry.
yes,
Yep.
hurt the ministry. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to deal with it on our own. And, Dave
Mhm.
Gibbs Law, like the Christian law firm, who is huge,
Uh-huh.
Dave Gibbs praises Jack Isles on so many occasions, and I will drop as many clips in this episode as possible.
Been touched and empowered by the Holy Spirit. He's a man that has stood with character and integrity that is unreproachable. He's a man that's been an example to every preacher in America.
He thinks that he's so honorable and he's just an amazing man. And you're supposed to be a lawyer, right? That should be protecting these children, and you're not. You're pedophile.
The CLA is such a horrible organization. They do not care. They do not represent the victims. They represent the church and the best interest for the church. And it's so frustrating. Like the church that I was born into, North Sharon in Grass Lake, Michigan, they had their big scandal. And Hiles told the CLA to go help that church out. And like that's where they became like as big as what they are. Because like it blew up like across the country and all this stuff. And like even Hiles was involved in protecting these two men from a little tiny church with a congregation of like 100 people from credible accusations that even though they were acquitted of, and I hate when I hear pastors say like, well, like you said, like we want to protect the cause of Christ, we want to protect the ministry. It's like, but you're not. You're protecting yourself. Because I have a church right down the street. It's an IFB church, and if I saw in the news that it came out that like their youth pastor was abusing one of his teen girls, but like the pastor found out about it in March, called the police in March, and he was removed from the building in March, I would feel a little bit safer sending my child there because you found out about abuse and you immediately put a stop to it. That makes me trust you as a church. But if I find out that you covered this up for 6 months, 15 years ago, and this guy is still at your church, why would I want to send my child to you? Why would I want to go as an adult woman? Why would I want to go attend your church? Why would I want to listen to anything you have to say?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree because I look at it like in reality, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your church, but you're not protecting your church. You're protecting your church's image. But in reality, everything, comes to light. That's biblical, that's in the Bible. And so when you hear about these like cases, right, in the IFB churches where they're like, this happened in 2008, but nothing was done, and he's still in the choir, he's still a deacon or whatever like that. And it's like, and then when you talk with them, it's like, no, we handled it. No, you didn't handle it. What you did was you put it under the rug, you gave a slap, maybe some counseling, aka let me throw the verses at you. But in reality, it's complete opposite. They probably got the survivor, victim, whatever you want to use term. They probably made you feel guilty. I mean, the fact that Jack Schaap, and it cracks me up only because of the way that the news guy says it, because his face is priceless. But when he's like, you guys will never believe this, he said God made him do it.
Sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl, and said essentially that Jesus made him do it. Now a former mega church pastor, I should say, is being sentenced.
He's literally saying God made to take this young girl again, cross state lines, do what I did to her, but God told me. Like,
right.
I'm sorry.
That was I remember being home on summer vacation when all this first happened. Yes. And I was getting person after person from college calling me, being like, did you see the news? Did you see this? And the first couple phone calls, I just rolled my eyes. Like, just genuinely was like, they tried the same stuff with Hiles. They do it all. I was like repeating the same stuff I'd heard. They do this all the time. They're just trying to destroy his image. They're just trying to destroy, his ministry. Just ignore it, blah, blah, blah. And then like, I kept getting more and more and more calls. And eventually I started getting angry at people and kind of telling them off. And being like,
because you don't want to think anything. Like when you're around these people, right? So like when you're born and raised in this high controlling religious cult, like I say it's a cult. Some people, whatever, but it's 100% a cult. And you look up to these people, right? And you look up to them as like, this person has the answers, right? And when you're desperately wanting an answer, you're going to look for it anywhere. You're going to say, well, look at his life. He has a wife. He has great children, right? Even though his Jack Kyle's children are, yeah, that's another. But you know, look, he's got it all, right? And it's just like also maybe these young men in First Baptist Church of Hammond, Hyles Anderson, they're looking at Hyles, right? And they're looking, oh my gosh, he has made a huge impression. I too can do that. God's called me to do it. And it's like, okay. And they love talking about like Elvis Presley and all that. Like, you don't, that's all bad or whatever. It's like, you were the, Jack Hyles was the Elvis, okay, of the IFB. He might as well should have just started dancing, because I mean, the video of them giving him $70,000 for his 70th birthday. Thank you so much, Pastor. Like, that video was like, what? Him coming in and they're holding up like he's this king, right? Like, he is the Elvis, right? And IFB. And to have that mindset of, I'm superior, I can do whatever I want. And then you have this young guy who's heard their whole life, you can be like him, right? I mean, heck, they gave up things where if you can't be him, you can look like him, which is so insane. So when you're young, you look up to these people and you're thinking they're godly. You don't want to think anything bad. You don't want to say, oh crap, maybe they did do this. Maybe they are a monster. And and it's really hard. Because you look up to them your whole life and it's like, no, I know this person. This person would never do this. And I know, like you said, you got angry with these people. You're like, no, they did that with Jack Hyles. It's just rumors, because that's what you've known, is what you've been taught. And when your whole life kind of just gets thrown to you, like your life is literally a lie, it messes with you.
Yep. It messed me up for a while. Because like I was home on vacation when it happened. And even when I went back, like I went back that year for college, a lot of people, like the admission rate dropped like crazy because a lot of people wouldn't come back, which rightfully so. You know, their pastors made good choices. Mine sent me back. But, but they like even when I got back, I still didn't really believe it. Like I did, like I'd seen the news reports, I saw the police reports, you know, like I'd seen everything, but he hadn't been arrested yet, like charged, you know, like they were in that in between phase or whatever. And like the church had gotten rid of him. Eddie Lapina had made his statements, and like I knew him, I trusted him. Like I couldn't not believe it, but I couldn't believe it, you know. And I remember it was a lot. Like it, And I remember when they went through while we were at college and called the meeting in the gym. They just all of a sudden that day canceled classes, and they had like all these games out in the football field and all this stuff. So you were just like occupied all day. And none of us thought anything of it. We thought it was just, you know, kind of building everyone's morale up. It's been a rough summer, rough start to the year. And then they called us all into the gym and made the announcement of the fact that like Scott has been arrested. You know, like this is what's happening. Charges are being filed. You know, he was arrested about an hour ago. And in the moment, I was so angry. I didn't really process much of what they were saying, because I was just angry at everyone. I was angry at him because it felt, and I'm sure I've heard this from a lot of other people who like grew up at First Baptist, where, you know, it felt like he had hurt me personally by doing what he did. And so I was angry at him. I was angry at being there. It was just angry in general. But looking back at what like the staff told us, they were talking about like, you know, not talking to the press, about the fact that like some of you are going to think that this isn't fair, that he's being arrested, or like you're not going to think it's fair, the decisions that are going to be made in the coming months. But remember that when you talk to other people or like people back home, or if you feel the need to talk to the press, because they were outside of the church all the time, you know, like to be careful what you say because it reflects on us as a ministry. And like none of it sounded odd in the moment, but looking back, like how could anyone, he kept repeating the fact that I know a lot of you don't think it's fair. that Scott was arrested. And it's like, I was angry as like I was so angry to the fact that like I found one in my Dropbox like a few years ago, but I was writing like angry hate mail. You know, like if you write a letter and then you put it in your drawer and then you don't send it, you get over it. That method. I was doing that on my laptop, like over and over again, like to Scott, just like chewing him out on my laptop. And even in that state, I knew that if he did this thing, it was fair for him to get arrested.
Mhm.
And like no one thought that it was like certain people on staff, at least, kept on reiterating the fact that I know a lot of you are going to think it's unfair. It's like, what kind of message are you, like, what are you trying to say here? What message are you trying to send to all these young people? We were all 18, 19, 20 years old.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just
You
crazy.
know, it's so the hypocrisy, you know, we've talked about the hypocrisy so many times.
Hmm.
Like, you know, you get told from a little child, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not have, you know, adultery, all this. And then you
Hmm.
have these staff members, you have these godly influences on your child's life, on your life, your family's life, all of it. They're literally living a lie. They're
Yeah.
living a lie. You have pastors covering up the, you know, like you said, like looking back now, you know, that you've taken yourself, because again, and I've said this 100 times and I stand by it, your blinders will not completely come off until you actually leave it completely. And it's really,
Yeah.
but you'll always find an excuse. Well, they didn't mean that.
Hmm.
What they
Yeah.
meant was this. No, take what they said. That's what they meant.
Right. If you didn't know them personally, you were just watching this play out on Facebook or on the news, or you were reading it in a book 10 years later, like how would it come across to you? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, a lot of people struggle with separating that even after they start to leave. Like my parents, you know, are no longer like on Scott's side. Once he got arrested, they were like, okay, this thing like they had a hard time accepting that he did it at first, but once he got arrested, they were like, okay, he did the thing, he's been charged, he pled guilty, blah blah blah. Scott's bad, he's out, you know, whatever. But they still worship Hiles like crazy. Absolutely adore him. And even for me, like even after the Scott stuff and even after I left, like when I left everything in 2020, left my ex, moved out, started over, it took me until like 2023 to be able to just in my own head say maybe Hiles was a bad guy. Like even though like I knew I've read all the stuff about, the affairs and like his secretary and like all the stuff that went on behind the scenes, him covering up for his son, like I knew all of the things and it was so ingrained even deeper for Hiles that I couldn't even admit to myself. Not that he was an evil man, just that maybe he wasn't a good guy.
Yeah.
It was so hard. Like now I'm just like, yeah, he's a messed up dude. Like I'm fine with it now, but it took years to be able
Yeah.
to.
Really sad. Definitely when you look up to someone. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And it doesn't matter who
Yeah,
you are. And it doesn't matter what position or whatever. If you did something wrong, you should be held accountable for it. And
right.
people's views on you should change. And if they don't change, that is an issue. And when you have
Yeah.
people, you know, like kind of like you said, it took so many years to say Jack House is a bad person. You know, he
Hmm.
had an affair with his secretary, which is so comical to me because in all the videos of him preaching, you have his wife here and his secretary over
Uh-huh.
there. Bingo. You know, you have Beverly, and then I
Yes, you
can't.
see the visual.
Yes, I can't remember her name. It'll come to me, but
Jenny,
boom, boom.
Miss Chick.
Yes, boom, boom, and it's like,
Hmm.
did you know Beverly? Did you know? You
I
had
have a feeling she
had
did.
enough. She had
I,
enough. As a good
yeah.
IFC wife, you don't say anything. Just like we can track back to Cindy. She literally stood by Jack Schaap's side, which was mind blowing to me. Definitely because I didn't know him, or I don't have any experience with them. But to
Right.
know like your husband is literally a pedophile, a predator,
Hmm.
God made him take this girl across state lines. That alone would have been like, I have no idea who I married, and I have no idea who you are, and I do not,
Yep.
whatever. And I know that she had walked away, and now they're divorced, and she's
Yeah.
remarried. But to know that she stood by his side is mind-blowing, because there is no hell
I
when
was
he's
so confused and disappointed when I saw that she was sticking with him. And I tried to go through, like, once I left, like, I was able to kind of look back and be like, shoot, like, I found it hard to do certain things because Jack Hyles was my pastor for like 5 years. He was her dad.
Mhm.
So, like, she went through years of having him and then being like the center of attention and being in the public eye, and then starting over this ministry of First Baptist with like her new husband, who's basically just a clone of Hyles, but way more sexual and weird. Like, I kind of understood not why she was doing it, but how she kind
Yeah,
of got
I mean, we
stuck
can for
in it.
sure. Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's
But
the hard thing, is like when you look at like these people, right? Like, definitely, like, let's use Cindy as an example. Your dad is probably the number one fundamental preacher out there. He is the
yeah.
Elvis of the time for preaching Bible thumping believers, right? And
Hmm.
grow up also having Dave Hiles as your brother, who, yikes, gotta go. But you have this, right? And you just often should wonder what went on in her life, what went on in behind the scenes in her life, right?
Hmm.
What went on? And then you get paired with Jack Schaap, and he's a predator, and you're married to him, and you're trying, so, like, yes, for sure, you can kind of dissect like what went on.
Yeah.
Try to give grace, but there's only grace to a certain extent with me personally. That's just how I.
Right. Yep.
And so
I try to give enough grace to understand how you got to that point, but
it'd
at
be
some point
different if
you
she
have to pull
said, yeah,
yourself out of it.
it'd be different if she said, hey, I don't know anything, but then when the facts were out, she should have stepped back. But she was
Yeah.
with him. That's what's crazy. All
Hmm.
for
I
all
mean,
of
I
it.
think it only took her, I want to say it was like 3 years after he got convicted to just be like, nope, I'm done. And she just filed for divorce and like moved on. So like I am happy that she did that, obviously. And even if you don't like Cindy, you're gonna be excited that she got out of that situation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I wish she had done it a little bit sooner, just for her.
Yeah, and that's what's, and
But
there's probably so many other families, right, in the IFB that have experienced this, right, within their church or whatever. They're like, your husband's a pedophile. Why are you standing by his side? But if I divorce him, I'm not a good Gershon, kind of like the
yeah,
Duggars, right? The Duggars. You have
right.
Anna, who is still married to Josh, knowing what he did, stood by his side, went to court all over,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like,
Yeah, he did
and,
like
and you just
way
think,
more horrific. Like
well,
it's
it's awful. And you're just
uh,
like, something fundamentally is wrong with you. But when you're brainwashed
ah,
to thinking that these are the ways, like, it's just like, again, like, Mormons believe that there's different levels of heaven, and there's different kingdoms. I feel like with IFB, they think that if they even slightly get off track, you're going to hell. The church is going to be
mhm.
and it's going to be my fault that the church that we go to is not the only, and it's like, no, you got to be realistic. You got to be
Yeah.
realistic.
I feel like especially for women, because like before it's like blue denim and lace, it's like, we talked about that for a minute. You are starting on this, for lack of a better word, grooming process of being the perfect wife from the time you're in fourth grade. But before that, they had far above rubies, which was for first, second, and third grade.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the day that you're born, especially if you're raised in the IFB, you are conditioned to believe that your one and only purpose in life is being a good wife.
Yeah.
So if that is the reason that you exist, more than like a personal, all you want in life is to be a wife and a mom, but like if literally the reason that you were on this earth is to be a wife to someone, stepping away from that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Almost more so because of how ingrained it is. It's almost scarier, I think, in that moment than staying married to someone who's a monster.
Yeah.
Because at least you know what you're supposed to do with them. And I think that's how like your brain warps that decision making. Obviously, being married to a monster is not better than being alone, but I think because it's placed on such a high, insanely high pedestal of importance, that part of your brain just gets broken in that moment, and it's all about either saving the image of the ministry plus your purpose is to be a good wife. And it just, yeah, they broke a lot of girls.
No, yeah. I agree with it. And I look at a lot of women in the IFB as victims, whether they want to look at it in that way or whatever, because
Yeah.
they don't recognize that there's more to life than just being a good Christian wife. There's a good You
Mhm.
don't have to be submissive in the way that they think you do.
Right.
They take that and they warp it into how can I control, and it's just like, no,
Yeah.
you can be submissive and still be respected, loved, seen, heard, all of it, right?
Hmm. Yep. It's a
There is a
different thing.
there's a biblical love versus abuse love, and they try to warp it together, and it's like, that's not no, let's stop doing that. And I
Right.
think it's huge for that.
Hmm.
Like kind of like what you were saying, Jack Schaap has kids, and that, Kenneth, if you ever find this, just know that Alyssa's signature is in your Bible. But um, he supported Jack, his father. He wrote letters to the church,
Hmm.
all of that. I know that he's supposedly a pastor in Ohio. Do you know anything else about Kenneth or Ken or whatever?
I know that I think around the same time that his mom left, I think the whole family kind of migrated out of it kind of together. I think having Hiles and Scott out of their lives kind of gave them that second to, because they weren't at Hiles at First Baptist anymore either. Like they left it, all of that. I think they finally got to kind of see through some of it. Um, I don't know I know that it's not an IFB church from what I could tell. I don't think any of them are IFB anymore, but I know they're all still like Christian. But like when I can find pictures of like Ken and his family, like the girls are wearing pants, which isn't that big of a deal to some people, but when you're coming out of the IFB, that's a big like whoa, visual and moment.
Going
Um,
on.
right. So yeah, I mean they seem to be I've not listened to like any of the sermons or looked at any posts or anything like that. So I mean I don't know how far he's come, but I want to say I heard him on, oh, what was the name of that podcast? I think it's called like Recovering Fundamentalist or something like that. And it's just four guys who used to be in the IFB who are now pastors of like other denominations and such. And he was on that one. And I feel like when I listened to it, he was talking about the fact that he kind of regrets the way that he like wholeheartedly supported his dad and wrote the letters. He got kind of vulnerable with it and was talking about the fact that like, it wasn't me as, you know, Ken Scott supporting Jack Scott. It was a son trying to support his dad.
Yeah.
Like he kind of took himself out of that like I'm Hiles's grandson position. It was just he was a kid trying to support his, and it doesn't make it okay, but like I kind of
No,
I'm kind
I
of,
mean,
but also
I feel like anyone would understand that, right? Like, all you want to do is I feel like any kid out there, all you want is your parents' approval. They want you to, I
mm,
think the hardest thing to hear from a parent is, I'm disappointed in you, or I'm disappointed.
yeah.
I think those like words can crush any kid's,
Hmm.
like wanting that love and acceptance. And definitely when you feel like you have to earn love, it's like, okay, I have to earn this, so I have to stand by his side. So I feel like if anyone out there holds that against Ken, or really any of them, I feel like that's kind of unrealistic, because I feel
Yeah.
anyone would. Definitely the
Right.
way in the environment that we grew up in, right? It's
Yeah. Like if
very
I
well,
grew up in
yeah,
Holt
yeah.
and I grew up at Hiles, which was kind of the epicenter, they were inside the home. They were like you could
Yeah,
throw a picnic
yeah.
on like
You don't know what they went through, none of us.
right.
And it's easy to throw judgment, been there, done that. And again, like with Cindy, yeah, I could be like, girl, what were you thinking?
Right.
Standing by his side and taking 3 years to divorce him. I would have done this, whatever. But if we probably deep dive in who Cindy is now, and hear like maybe from her, like her actual experience within the IFB and what it was like being Jack High, all of it, like
Yeah.
it
Being
probably
in the public eye in the way that she was, every like Christian
yeah.
womanhood, like everyone was scrutinizing what she was wearing. If she walked up on the platform wearing a dress that was just a quarter inch shorter than what maybe it should have been for the platform, that's all anyone could talk about across the nation. Like it was being that, like having to scrutinize every single step you take, every facial expression, the earrings that you wear, like everything being on display all the time. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Oh God, no. I've always said I would. You couldn't pay me to be a pastor's kid. Well, thank God, because in a way I was bad, so I would have been. They would have wanted. They probably would have baptized me every Sunday. I would have probably had to go to the
Would
altar.
I didn't want to go home.
I rededicated my life to Christ 170 times, type of thing. And there is
Same.
people out there that's like that. There's tons of people who said like, "Hey, I had to get baptized because blah blah blah," and it's like,
I at First Baptist alone, I was baptized 5 times, 6 times. I got reassurance just in the 4 years that I was at Hiles, I got reassurance of my salvation 3 times.
mhm.
Did it 2 more times up at Grace. Like, because they're constantly convincing you that if you do anything wrong, well, a saved person wouldn't do that thing. So if you did this
Yes,
thing,
yes, yes,
you
yes.
must not be saved. And so you just get panicked and you start freaking out. And what if I get in a car accident on the way home? And so you just have to get saved again, just in case, because it didn't mean it right the first time.
Oh my gosh, 100% yes.
Oh,
I've said this. I feel like I could shout it off the mountaintops. I can't tell you how many times I would see the same kids at a youth rally, youth conference, whatever you want to frame it,
camp.
like camp, all of it.
Mhm.
Rededicating, getting saved. I'm gonna do this,
Yep.
whatever. And it's only because of the fear-based preaching.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
you lied. Well, someone who has Christ in their heart would never do that. You read
Yep.
that book knowing that they have this in it. Well, someone who's saved. And it's like, oh my gosh, you went to a football game instead of a youth rally. Someone who has Jesus Christ in your heart wouldn't have done that. And then it's like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, now I have to like get down on my knees, ask for forgiveness, and be saved again. And it's like a constant
Yep.
like thing. And for me, nobody's really made me feel like I didn't have Christ in my heart because I know, like, even though it's like the most basic IFB salvation story, I legit know where I was, how old I was, what room. It was me and my mom. Like I have that memory, so I never like even in my adult life, I never like questioned it. I questioned
Yeah.
if I was worthy of his forgiveness. Like, yes, I
Right.
asked for forgiveness, but was I really worthy of it? If I did this or whatever, do I really have to earn his
Yeah.
love, even though you tell me that he died on the cross for our sins and that what you forgive or whatever? It's like, did he really forgive
Right.
me though, right? And I think
Yeah.
the reality was I never forgave myself for what I did. And the way it was portrayed was I was looking at Jesus, but in reality, I should have just been like, no, I never forgave myself for what I did. And that just
Right.
and coming out of it and stuff like that and looking at myself like, no, I forgive you, Olivia. Like you gotta let go. Like you were a kid, you
Right.
whatever. And so, but it was always like I felt like it was more of how do I earn God's love? Do I do these steps? And I saw this post that someone grew up with. I grew up with her, and she's very heavily involved with the IFB. But she had made a post about salvation, but it wasn't about salvation, right? It was mental health and suicide. And my
Okay.
thought was knowing who she is, she had good intentions, but the way that she worded it was, hey, if you have suicidal thoughts, if you are going down a mental health crisis and you don't know where you're going, whatever, I can give you, this is how it was worded, I can give you the steps that you can apply every single day of your life, and Jesus will take all of it. And it's like, okay, I get what your intentions are saying, But what you're doing is false advertising. You're saying if you do these steps every single day, Jesus is going to just take everything and say, here you go. And that's unrealistic
Yeah.
too. Very
Yeah.
unrealistic, because if that was the case, your life, girl, would have looked completely different. And like,
Mhm.
and then it just comes off like, oh, you're attacking. It's like, no, I don't mean to, but, or like, I mean, I never said it, but I was just thinking, reading it, I'm like, what you're doing is your false advertising. It's just like saying when you
Yeah.
go past an Old Navy and it says jeans starting from 1999, and then you ring it up and it's 39.99, and you're like, ah.
Right. They only had one pair that was 1999, and they've been out of stock for 6 months.
Yes.
Like,
And it's like,
yeah.
wait, your window said that. Well, it's just like that, you know, and within the IFB, they treat Jesus and salvation and just really your Christian walk with God as an MLM pyramid. You do
Yeah.
these, and then you are saved. And it's like, that is so unrealistic from what I have found
Mhm.
leading the IFB. And, you know, my biggest hope is everyone who leaves the IFB kind of takes that, you know, initiative to figure out what is true, what is right. And whether, you know, if you say, you know what, I look at it and it's more scientific based is what I agree with, then sure, I can say, you know what, at least you gave it your all and this is what you came up with. I also understand on the other hand, where you grow up in such extreme craziness like Hyles, and you're
Mhm.
like, if that is God, I want nothing to, you know, I don't want nothing to do with it. And I get that.
Right.
And so then a
Yeah.
part of me is like, I don't blame them, right? But
Yeah.
it's really damaging. And, you know, with the IFB, the amount of abuse that they have covered up is insane. And
Yeah.
why I wanted to do Hyles was because I do have a wide variety of listeners who know me and they're trying to understand what the IFB is. And also, I feel like, you know, with Let Us Pray, they kind of explained everything in a way, but I feel like there's just so much more, right?
Right.
There were few
You
times.
could do like 6 Let Us Pray documentaries just about Hyles and still have stuff left over.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's just, it's crazy how many stories that are out there of, you know, getting told that the church took care of it. In reality, the church didn't take care of it. It's just, let me sweep it on the rug, do a couple months counseling, okay, throw some Bible verses at you, and then just say
Yeah.
that it was your fault. In the
Yep.
long run, it's your fault. It was your fault because you were 13 years old, you had an affair. It's like an affair at 13 years old. Maybe.
Right. Like that's not how this works.
So yeah, there's a clip where this guy is in front on First Baptist Church of Hammond, like he's on stage, and he literally
Right.
flat out says, you know, I knew that there was red flags with Jack Schaap from the get-go, but he was like, I wanted to wait a year before I say anything and look within the year of everything that came out. And he's like, I mean, publicly, and I'm like, okay, at least you're publicly saying it, but then it's like, dude, what? Like,
Why would you wait a year?
yeah, well, he's like, I was new, and I'm like, okay, seriously though, I'm like, and everybody's like, well, at least he has like the balls to stand up there and say like, hey, I was in the wrong, but it's like, no.
But I got to ask the question, what kind of loyalty is this? What kind of loyalty is this? I want you to think about that word loyalty, because I made a special effort today, look all through the Bible, and you know, I could not find one mention of the word loyalty. Now, loyalty is an important thing, but is it a biblical virtue? Is it a spiritual gift? Is it a godly command? The Lord sent Nathan to confront the king, to wag his finger in his face. Sometimes I wonder, where were the wagging fingers? Can I make a confession? When I came here over a year ago, when I moved here over a year ago, I immediately knew in my spirit that something was wrong. But I made a covenant with the Lord and myself. I mean, I remember one time I corrected Pastor Schaap on a sermon. It was a quiet reception, not unkind. But I began to think, you know, I'm the new kid on the block. I don't have any right to go to Pastor Schaap If I hear something that I think is a little off base biblically, if I sense something that's wrong, I am going to earn the right, I said to myself, by waiting 1 year before I say anything. Well, that year was just up. And I have to wonder if I'd been a Nathan. And I have to wonder, why didn't I say anything? Why didn't you? Why didn't the staff? And I'm not saying they didn't say anything. But did any of us know to do good and not do it? Or were we afraid of the king? Were we afraid of what he would say or how he would respond? Were we afraid of losing our job and our salary? Did we fail to speak up because, my friend, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And sometimes we need to be wounded. Now, I believe you ought to esteem and you ought to submit to those in rulership over you.
No.
Within that year, you could have saved a survivor. You could have, and you know, and he'll have to live with that, right? Like he'll have to deal with that or whatever, and God will have to do whatever with that.
Right.
But red flags were there. The proof was in the pudding. But he was new, and he didn't want to say anything. It's like, no.
Oh my gosh. I wonder how many times something like that has happened, where somebody in a church, that's IFB church, saw a red flag about a youth pastor or a Sunday school teacher or an assistant pastor or a deacon, and just didn't want to say anything in case he was wrong, didn't want to ruffle any feathers, or knew the pastor wouldn't believe him, or like, I wonder how many people have seen things before they happened.
Well, I know about 7 on my hand for my former church. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, I know so many. But yeah, that's it stood out the most when I was like looking in more depth with Jack Schaap, whatever. I had stumbled upon it, and I thought, and I remember reading the tagline on YouTube, and I thought, wait, what? And then when I watched it, I was like,
that's so crazy.
All the men that are in the background just sitting there. There's no impressions. And it's like, and then I'm like, did he get yelled at after the service for saying that?
Right? Probably. It's like, it's the same way like the polished shaft sermon.
Curses! That's hot! That's hot! God says, shut up. I can handle it. I know what I'm doing. Oh, God, that hurts. Oh, God, I'm so tired. Oh, God, I didn't want to lose her. Oh, God, I didn't want to have that pain. Oh, God, no. Oh. God, you love me so much, don't you? Yes. Oh, God, thank you for what you're making me. You're welcome. Oh, God. I see an opportunity. Yeah, so do I. Oh, God, I see a beautiful wife. Yeah. I never dreamed of her. A lot of things you never dreamed of, son. Lots of things you never dreamed of. Oh, you think I can marry her? She's very, very polished. You better get more polished, son. God! The little children, I hold my arms. Oh, it's sweetest thing in the whole world. Oh, I'm so honored to be their daddy.
Errol, if you watch, like, instead of watching him, I know it's very distracting, watch the men on the platform, all of them, and I know almost every guy on that platform, they're all just sitting there like, But then you can see one guy towards the end, it's Todd Weber, it's Jack Schaap's son-in-law. He's going, like, looking around, and like, are you guys seeing this too? Like, do you see what he's doing in front? We're like, no one's gonna say anything? Okay, really? Like, you can see him, like, having this meltdown on the stage, watching his father-in-law do this in front of a room full of teenagers, and every other man on that platform who are, like, lifelong First Baptist men don't even flinch.
That's how it is with Hiles, too. You have these insane sermons that he is out there talking about, which this is just a popular one, so, whatever. But he's like, every man who goes to jail for rape should be a half-naked woman.
Who slew all of these poor kids that are the girls pregnant before they married? Caused the boys to get so stirred up passionately that they'll rape a girl. Brother, you listen to me. For every single man that goes to prison for rape, There ought to be right beside him a half-naked girl in the next.
Well, when you're a woman and you're sitting out there and you're hearing that, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I don't want any of these men to do that to me. So let me wear a turtleneck, never show my ankles, high knee socks, like cover up. But you know what's
But it
crazy
still
is
happens.
how many survivors are out there that can say to themselves, I wore the turtlenecks, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it still happened to me.
Yep. I made kind of a joke about it, but like in my first episode, I was like, it happened. I followed all the rules. I was like little Miss Goody Two Shoes. Like I followed every rule you could set down. And it happened to me. And my normal daily wardrobe was a floor length jean skirt with no slit and an oversized Star Wars t-shirt. Like if I was just home or like going to the store, that's what I wore. That's what my closet was. I never wore anything that was, and even if I did, it wouldn't be an excuse for it. But like I never wore anything that was the least bit like come hither in any way whatsoever, even in like a super religious environment. And it still happens because a bad person is going to do something that they want to do to someone else, regardless of what they're wearing.
Absolutely.
It does not matter. And like that comment that Hiles made from the pulpit, like I remember him saying that when I was there. And that was years after the clip that they used for Let Us Pray. Like that was a normal thing to hear there. And like even as a little girl, I remember hearing things in that same category to where when something did happen to me, even though I hadn't met anyone who like I knew had gone, I mean, look, now I know tons of the girls that I grew up, had the same thing happen to them, but in that moment, I didn't know anyone else who had been through something similar, but I knew if I went and told my preacher, I would be blamed for it. I couldn't figure out what it was I did that caused him to do it to me, but I knew that it was my fault. I was 16. Like, no, there was nothing I did that, and like now I know that now, but like in the moment, like I blamed myself for it. And I felt so bad because he was finishing up college. He was going to be a man of God. And I did something that caused that guy to stumble and ruin what he could have done. How many people now are not going to go to heaven because the one chance they got to hear about salvation was that guy starting a church in this little tiny town in the middle of nowhere. And now he's not going to because you set him off course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
And
the trickle down of like all the fault and the guilt and everything is so crazy with like how they lay that in. Like that your brain just completes that circle of all the things that are going to be your fault because of what someone else, like a decision they made,
And then you get thrown in though, once you're in junior high, it's like, let's make some. And it's like, how do I act? Oh, you can't look at him. You can't like that. And then it really, again, it goes back to the way that the system is set up. It is a pedophile playground. I have not been able to find anything on Jack Schaap. Like,
yeah, he's a low profile.
He ghost mode. He is a ghosty.
Yep. I know I don't know if his parents are still alive or not, to be honest. I don't really track them, but they live in Holland, Michigan, which I don't know, 4 or 5 hours from where I live. And I know when he got released, he went back to be in the same area as them. But I mean, that was 3 or 4 years ago. I heard rumors that he, like months after he got released, had a new girlfriend and they got like a mobile home together. But I don't think I've heard anything about him since.
Yeah. I haven't been able to find anything on him. He is like legit ghost mode.
Like I probably would be too if I were him. He's way too well known, and there's way too many people that do not like him, both in the IFB and out of it, that are angry and.
I wish they would also take the anger to Dave Hiles.
Yeah.
Lord, and there's so many books out there too that so many people have written. For example, Robin from season 1, she just released Fearless Flight. She is going to be on for this Hiles series too, to come back.
I need to reach out to her. It's been a long time.
Yeah, she's great. But stuff like that, where there is a lot of resources. The resources also can be online, everything,
Yeah.
every clip, every audio, everything that I have put in season 1 and season 2, if they are out there. And so I always say, do your due diligence, research it. If there is a reason why you're sitting in a pew and you're like, that does not feel right. I don't like hearing that. I don't agree. Kind of like what you
Yeah.
said, you should ask yourself why.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, you're
Trust
probably
it.
going to
Maybe
spiral.
that
Yeah.
feeling that you're told to ignore because that's you rebelling against the pastor, maybe that's the Holy Spirit trying to tell you something's not right here. It's okay to trust the feeling inside because that's
Yeah.
what it's there for. And there's someone else telling you not to listen to yourself. That's not a good thing. That's not a positive way to teach people and influence things. That's a red flag.
Yeah, no, I agree. I gotta, like I've said, I watched Let Us Pray. I got that feeling that the Holy Spirit really put on my heart to start this podcast. And if it wasn't for you and so many other survivors out there willing to come on and share their experience and, having these open discussions about the crazy legalistic things that we experienced firsthand, I probably wouldn't have made it this far because, even though I'm a yapper, probably people would be like, okay, she yaps too much. She needs to get a life. But
Yeah,
I
perfect
really
amount.
I appreciate, coming on today's episode and just kind of like catching up. Is there like where are you at now from, the time that we have filmed in the beginning of season 2? Is there anything that's different?
I think when we were filming the first one, I was about to get married. I believe I was like 2 weeks out
Yeah,
from
I think
getting
it was like, yeah, because I remember
Yep.
texting you about a picture and you were like, I'm on my honeymoon. I'm like, oh,
Right. I was like, I'll get back to you tomorrow.
yeah.
But yep, I've gotten married, so that's going really good. Nothing too much has changed other than, I got married. But other
Yeah.
than that, things are going really good.
Well, I know that you
And
also do a
podcast.
sensory shop on Etsy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, share that for the viewers and listeners. What's that about?
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. So, yep, it's called All Things Sensory Shop, and I just make like fidgets and sensory stuff, things like that for people who are autistic, ADHD, anxiety, things like that. I have a website and Etsy, and it's going really well. I've done stuff with Discord. I've working right now I've done stuff for quite a few colleges and schools. I'm working right now with a court system in one of the states for like their juvenile area for like family therapy. They want to have fidgets available for all of them. So I've got this side of my craft room is a mess and it's chaos. I'm not gonna turn the camera, but
That's
yeah, I've got all of that. But
Well, I will make sure to link it in here.
oh, thanks.
But that is awesome. I'm so glad to hear, that the wedding went good, and that you're doing really good. And who knows, this probably will not be your last time on this platform because I enjoy
I'm here
talking
to come back on. I love it.
having this open discussion. But yeah, thanks so much for kind of just chit chatting about Hiles a little bit, things that we did not get to talk about from your other episode, and just kind of talk about the crazy legalistic things that take place in the IFB, and kind of just talking about stuff and what you experienced and how, like you said, it was crazy, and being vulnerable, saying like, hey, I was angry at these people because I thought this person was good, even though he did something bad. It took so many years because I think so many people in that environment, whether they were at First Baptist Church or if they've gone through another scandal where you just like, I don't want to believe that happened. I don't want to believe this person happened. And then it did. It's like, oh, so thanks for, opening up about that for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love that there's so many like new podcasts and stuff like this coming out because everyone's got that thing that like maybe like the Leaving Eden podcast, it just doesn't scratch the itch for you. They're a great podcast, maybe it's not for you, but Preacher Boys is a little too intense and that's just not quite right. Like yours is a really nice like in between where if someone just wants to sit down and listen to a couple of people just kind of talk and ramble about stuff and they're learning things, they're getting insight into stuff. It's great. I love the fact that I like your podcast. You do a really good job with it. And I like coming on. So definitely get to come on again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Alissa, for speaking on today's episode. And again, go check out her episode, season 2. where she talks more in depth about her time at Hiles, a little bit about John Jenkins Gaylord, and all of that. So thank you for today's episode, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Bye.